So Peter, you're still muted at the moment.
Yeah.
Right, can people hear me now?
Yes.
We can, yeah. Don't forget the full screen trick as well, Peter.
Sorry?
Don't forget the full screen. Perfect.
Oh yeah, okay. Right. Right, I'm going to skip through this for the simple reason that I recognise so many names here. I suspect a lot of you have seen this before. However, it's the Ryedale Environmental Group that's responsible for this week of events. And we're a group in Ryedale, part of North Yorkshire, who facilitate and assist groups and individual projects in our area. We work closely with a number of local environmental groups, which are listed here. And these groups undertake a lot of very interesting projects. Just to take one example, in a very small village called Kirby Misperton with just 50, 60 houses, we have our own recycling centre, which is used by many people, where we recycle things which aren't currently taken away by the local council. And there are plenty of local initiatives which we're very happy to help with. Some of you might have seen Pickering Hedgehog Rescue give their introduction earlier this week, and we have a written presentation on Pickering Food Share, where they get food that would otherwise be thrown out because it's close to its sell-by date, give it away, and they get rid of literally tons of food that would otherwise just be thrown away. So there's plenty going on in our area, and please visit our website if you haven't done so already, and you can find out all the exciting things that are happening in the area. Now, I've been very quick because I think there'll be lots of questions for Andrew. Just on a personal level, back in the 1990s, I was part of a very vibrant animal rights group in Worcester, back in the Midlands. And when I wasn't getting arrested during fox hunts, Compassionate World Farming were extremely supportive in our street stalls, promoting vegetarianism and veganism. And they weren't so much supportive as leading from the front when it came to the mass protests against live exports, which more older people here might remember. The then founder of CIWF, Joyce De Silva, was on the front line, and I got to know her and also Phil Limbury quite well, who now leads CIWF. So I do have history with Compassionate World Farming, and so I'm very pleased indeed to introduce Andrew. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Paul, as well. How do I get my full screen, Paul? Do I?
If you start sharing again, then that'll come back.
I share my screen. Is that okay?
You need to do that little trick you did before, so
Yeah.
you can see the slide. Does it display settings? You wouldn't think we practiced this as well. So, I think it was in display settings at the top there, Andrew. I think. And you see just above your slide.
I can't access my other screen, which is where it says display settings.
Okay.
Sorry about this, folks. Paul, do you have a the main displays on this side and the presenter views on this side? I can't get my cursor to access the display settings.
If you stop sharing, Can you change the settings maybe that way? Because you could do it before, couldn't you? You were straight on it and it worked fine.
Should I rejoin the Zoom call?
No, that won't make any difference. So can you can't see the menu now. Just try sharing again, Andrew, and see if that works. I think it's because you've got two screens up. That's why it's proving difficult, I think. There we are. That's better.
Is that the right screen?
Yeah, we can see the full slide now.
Right. Sorry about it, everyone. Yeah, panic there. Thank you again for inviting me to come and talk. The title is Food That Costs the Earth, Intensive Farming and the Environment. And I guess my aim is not to convert you all to be vegan, but just maybe to maybe give you some evidence as to why reducing our animal consumption of food products is really the best thing you can do for the environment and for animal welfare as well. So as Peter just said, the Compassion Involved Farming have quite a long history of trying to maintain standards of animal welfare, particularly to get animals out of factory farms. A quick survey, so you can read faster than I can speak. So can everyone quickly read this question and decide what best suits you, A, B, C, or D?
And put the answer in chat. We'll read out the answers.
Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, just so many caged hens are laid by hens live in cages. Caged hens have less freedom and free-range eggs. Okay, I'm going to move on because it's a shorter time. Here's another question about pigs. Are pigs and chickens being kept intensively in sheds where they're mainly fed on grains? Again, there's 4 points of view towards this. Okay, and this is the final one. This is about being a vegetarian or a vegan. So you probably gathered that these 4 stances, A, B, C, and D, they're a pattern, and they each follow a different philosophical strand. And the 4 positions are animal rights, animal welfare, environmental conservationist, sustainable development, and anthropogenic or human first. None of these imply being cruel to animals. I don't think there's a single person watching this, or no one, very few people condone cruelty to animals. So it's interesting to know who fits into what of these categories. When I do these at school, in schools, that's my main place where I talk. It's mainly spread between B and C. They're the 2 main ones. There's a few brave young people who put their hand up for animal rights, and even braver people that put their hand up for humans come first, although again, it's nothing about being cruel to animals. So I've got a few slides on factory farming, just a few. Factory farming is where the animal no longer matters, and it's as an individual, and it's a factory. This is a battery cage, which was actually banned throughout the EU in 2012. With factory farming, they basically deprive the animal of anything which makes its life worth living. And this is a sow stall, which is banned in the UK in 1999. There's a partial ban in the EU, which means that a lot of the pig products like bacon, which are sold in this country, are still produced using these as sow stalls. This is often how we now breed chickens for meat. They never go outside. They're kept in very hot conditions to stop them losing weight from so all their energy goes towards just getting fatter, essentially. They are pumped full of antibiotics. They're fed very high diets of protein to get them fatter, and they're killed within a few weeks or a few months of being born. This is a very common sight in factory farms, that the piglets are isolated from the sow, from the mum, who, like any mum, has very strong urges to take care of her young, and isn't able to do that. And we still keep these sorts of crates here in the UK, and they're ostensibly to stop the mother from rolling over onto her piglets, so the piglets aren't hurt in any way, but it prevents the mother from interacting with her young. The pigs kept at that for weeks and weeks. This is a more common sight in the US, but it might come to the UK sooner rather than later. It's the intensive fattening up of cattle in these feedlots, they're called. This is very common in South America and the Amazon, which I'll talk about towards the end. And they're not fed natural grass, they're fed on grain and soya. And this is a very common sight, more the chickens, which we eat for meat, and the pigs. Often they don't ever get outside, and are fed on grains, soya, and cereals. So I'll show you a 2-minute of what is animal welfare, slightly happier 2-minute video clip. So some of you may actually have hens in your back garden, or when you were younger, you grew up with hens. Everything which is worth living for a hen, like making a nest, having a sand bath, exercise, running around, scratching, keeping themselves clean, exploring. In a factory farm, all these things are not allowed for the hen or the chicken. It's the same for pigs, which is another very intensively farmed animal. So how many animals do we eat in our lifetime? I'll give you how many pigs do you think everyone eats? How many fish, how many chickens, how many cows? Here's the number. So 20 sheep, 25 pigs, 4 beef cattle, 50 laying hens and thousands of chickens. So we sort of do have a, what's the word? We sort of do have a responsibility, I feel, towards these welfare of these animals. Now, this is the average amount of meat we eat per person per country. And you can see the UK is one of the highest consumers of meat in the world, so below US, at roughly 200 grams of meat per day. India is a largely vegetarian country, so they have very small amounts of meat. China, as it becomes more and more westernized and more wealthier, they're starting to adopt our Western type eating habits. As Earth in its whole, as a kind of global consumption, in the last 60 years, we've increased from roughly just over 50 trillion tons of meat consumed per year to over 300 million tons of meat consumed. Now, currently, the population of our planet is, I think, 8 billion. And by 2050, it'll be almost 10 billion. And by 2050, our meat consumption will estimated to be 600 million. So that's million, not trillion. 600 million tons of meat produced per year. So this will be almost twice what we're seeing now. So we've seen the side of factory farming, which is very cruel to animals. The other side is the impact on the environment. Particularly in intensively reared factory farms, the animals are fed solely on a diet of grain and soya. On the planet as a whole, over 1/3 of cereals and 90% of soya protein which we grow on our planet is not given to humans, it's fed to animals. A huge amount of the value of the crops is lost by converting it from plant to animal matter. Also, we're feeding animals food which humans can eat. So you'll all be aware of a very true fact. There's enough food on the planet to feed everyone on the planet 2 or 3 times. But because it's fed to animals first and foremost, almost, or at least billions of people go to bed each night hungry due to not having eaten. The way of farming, very intensive farming of crops is, there's a lot of insecticides, there's a lot of fungicides, there's a lot of a deforestation of a habitat encroachment. By contrast, I'm sure in your neck of the woods in Yorkshire, there'll be a lot of this sort of farming where sheep and cows are just left to graze naturally. So that's often on land which maybe isn't suited for other types of farming. It might be quite high up, it might be quite exposed, windy, very wet. And grass is not something which we can eat. So the animals here are eating a product we can't eat and turning it into something which we can eat. So one of the philosophies of compassionate world farming is, if you are going to eat meat, then try and eat, by all means, or eat free range organic meat, which is much healthier on the earth, on the planet. This is a table showing the conversion or the amount of energy and protein which is lost by converting when the cereals and soya are converted to are eaten by the animals. So this column here is the protein conversion, and even for animals which we are told are actually relatively efficient at converting soya and grain into protein, only 20 to 40% of the actual protein is kept in the animal. over 60 to 80% of it is lost. And if you look at beef farming, for example, beef cattle, then over 90% of the protein which is in the cereals and the soya is lost if you then eat the beef itself. Similar for energy, there's huge losses of over 90% for beef and 70 to 80% for chickens, for example. So it's more efficient to eat the soya and grain directly to people than to feed it to animals. Another reason is meat production and pollution. If you're, say, a cow in a field, then in a lot of ways, the waste it produces is very helpful for the soil, for the fields. But in a factory farm, it's very large quantities of waste in a very small place, which often is also full of antibiotics and so on, which gets into our water as well. For example, meat production, this is the sort of thing you get from factory farms, very high in ammonia, nitrates, and phosphorus, which can leak into the air and the water. This is a very interesting study by Poor and Nemchek, which looked at almost 40,000 farms and looked at the global environmental impacts of the entire food supply chain. And they showed that the consumption of food on our planet accounts for 26% of man-made greenhouse gases. So that's carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. 32% of terrestrial acidification. That's a threat to plant diversity and soil quality. And it's mainly caused by the atmospheric decomposition of acidifying compounds such as nitrogen oxide, ammonia, sulfur dioxide. 78% of eutrophication. That's an excess of richness in a lake or a body of water. So it causes, frequently due to fertilizers coming off the land into the waterways. It causes green algae on the top of the water, which cuts off the sunlight and going into the water itself, and the whole thing dies very quickly. Again, affecting water, fish, plants, and so on. Over a third of all the kind of our land which we can live in, which is habitable, is used for food. And 2/3 of our fresh water withdrawals are used for food. So that's food in general. But what if we break it down to different types of food? So we have farm machinery. We have the transport of food, for example, that causes CO2 to be released. We have crop fertilizers, which reduce nitrous oxide and methane. Animals release methane. There's indirect through the deforestation, such as in Yamson. And all in all, the farm stage dominates the actual animals and, say, rice fields. And that's up to 81% of greenhouse gas emissions due to food is due to the actual farming stage. And if you look at this, this figure, this shows the amount of greenhouse gases, the equivalent in terms of CO2, in terms of kilograms of CO2 to make 100 grams of protein. These ones here all have a very high impact. They require a lot of greenhouse gas to make 100 grams of protein. These ones here require a much smaller amount. And the ones here are all meat. They're beef, lamb, crustaceans, beef, cheese, pig, fish, farm meat, eggs. The ones here are plants, tofu, ground nuts, pulses, peas, and nuts. Again, if you compare cow's milk versus soy milk, there's almost 4 times the emissions from producing cow's milk compared to soy milk. So there's more and more evidence in the last few years, the last 10 years, that meat and animal products are responsible for more than half of the food-related greenhouse gas emissions. That's 50% of our total global emissions are produced by meat and animal products. If you look at acidification, which is say from the waste of animals or from fertilizers and so on land, again, it's these it's the farm animals, which is an order of magnitude greater than the vegetable-based sources of food. And for eutrophication, it's the same. And for land use, because these require such huge amounts of either land to graze on or to grow crops and soya, the livestock still have a huge amount of land use compared to other things we can eat ourselves, like plants. This is a total, this is from another study by Ryedale et al. And this is a total global impact on greenhouse gases for ruminants, which is sheep and cows. So they give methane off and nitrous oxide, as well as natural gas and landfill, biomass burning, coal and rice. So on the planet as a whole, we produce almost 2.3 gigatons of CO2 from these main forms of livestock, which is greater than coal, biomass, or natural gas. So we hear a huge amount about climate change and about changing our energy policy and going much more to our renewable forms of energy. We somehow don't have many conversations on how we should be reducing our meat consumption. This is another graph just showing, comparing differences in diet from a high meat eater, over 100 grams per day of meat. Remember, our average in the UK is 200 grams of meat per day, compared to someone who has a purely plant-based diet. So there's over twice the CO2 from someone eating a high amount of meat compared to someone eating no meat or no animal products at all. If you work out this over a whole year, 7.19 kilograms per day for a whole year is equivalent of driving a car to Australia. So again, we're encouraged to maybe change to electric vehicles or to use public transport, to stop using a car, and stop flying, which of course we all should be doing. But we also need to be looking at another effect of climate change, which is from producing meat and from eating meat. So pasture-based farming, by comparison—
It's half past now.
Yeah,
Andrew,
I saw that, thank you. It requires more land, but uses food that we can eat. The carbon is stored in the soil more. It increases the fertility of the soil, uses less water, and uses less waste. And crucially, uses land or uses grass, so uses food that we can't eat. So, as I said before, a really key message which compassionate modern farming tries to get across is that eating better quality, free-range, organic meat is much better for the planet as a whole, and trying to eat less meat. So the Amazon rainforest is getting deforested, cut down at an unprecedented rate. It's also on fire. You see these amazing articles on, say, the BBC website, linking the fires due to warmer temperatures due to change in the Earth's climate. It's nothing to do with that. They then say it's due to increased amount of wood being taken out of the forest. Again, that's a secondary effect. It's due to the burning of forest to produce fields, to grow soya, to either export the soya to like China so they can feed it to their animals, or to graze it, or to have the animals directly in the Amazon where they're slaughtered, and then the meat is sold to, say, the US or to here. That's a much more common picture of what you'll see in the Amazon rainforest, where they burnt the rainforest and they're grazing cattle. The the Amazon, as we all know, is one of the greatest biodiversity hotspots on our planet. And in general, our habitat loss is just extraordinary on our planet. And we are, so I'm sure that's something which we all care about a lot. This is a woman campaigning at Extinction Rebellion. I'm trying to get this point across. So we actually only need 40 grams of meat per day. So we're eating 5 times the amount of meat. So I don't think it's unreasonable to start expecting so maybe we could all do is try to eat less meat. So just to summarize, a high consumption of meat and dairy, both in the UK and on the planet as a whole, it requires expansion of grain-fed factory farming. The grain-fed means lots of fields devoted to growing soya and cereals. It's a huge loss of natural habitat and reduces biodiversity. It raises grain prices, so people go hungry. It's extraordinarily wasteful for energy, land, water, fertilizer, and resources. Increases poverty. It causes pollution to our air, to our water, to greenhouse gases as well, and increases health risks. So I mentioned these 4 things: animal rights, animal welfare, environmental sustainable development, and anthropogenic. All 4 are embedded on really trying to eat less meat and eating better meat. So no matter what camp you fall in, I really do think that there's kind of reasons why we should be reducing meat. So what can we do? And we can adopt eating practices that don't cost the earth and kind for animals. So more meadows, kinder animals, better soil, more forests, more grassland, more insects, cleaner waterways, and more biodiversity. And we do that by healthier and environmentally sustainable eating practices, which can be eating no meat, having a purely plant-based diet, or certainly trying to reduce the amount of meat and eating better meat. And that's the end of my talk, Peter and Paul.
Well, yeah, thank you very much indeed. We do, as predicted, we do have some questions, and if we can kick off with Rachel, I think I'd like to mention something that wasn't mentioned.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is because like the compassion in world farming when animals are alive, but obviously, we live near a massive bacon factory. We see pigs in trucks rattling up the A64 all the time, and they're off to the abattoir. What kind of compassion is there? It's absolutely horrific. I just can't.
Yeah.
There's no compassion at all there, is there? From what I can see.
None. So the animals being slaughtered is a whole different ballgame, and you can't really show images of that, or it's just, it's just so horrible. It's just horrible. Yeah.
Thank you. And well, Amanda has a sort of statement rather than a question, but I think it's something that's worth saying, Amanda. If you're, are you?
Hi. Is it? Yeah, I think I wrote it wrong though, but because the Lancet said, was it 40 grams of meat per day for a healthy diet? But actually, I don't understand why the Lancet would say that when the World Health Organization state that they've got meat as a class 1 carcinogen. I think it is processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen, and I think red meat is a class 2 carcinogen. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
No, it's just if we're told not to smoke, we shouldn't have nicotine, which is a class 1 carcinogen, and then the Lancet say that we should eat meat. It's bizarre.
I actually had a slide in which said that, and due to, I wasn't sure about how much time I had, so I took it out. You wouldn't give your children a pack of fags when they have their breakfast, but we feed them bacon, for example. And
Yeah,
as you just said, the World Cancer Organization explicitly say that processed meat gives you cancer. So it's a really interesting subject, is why do we then feed in schools and hospitals? We feed, we serve food in schools and hospitals, which is actually bad for people. You know, that's another question.
It's also it's like we give school, don't we? That was always in school children, and yet the dairy milk is extremely bad for people's health and all sorts of kids. But it's a bit of a crazy world.
Okay, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. There's a bit of a problem with your audio.
You went dial a key.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
You've got musical.
All right, I think it's on the point of, well, I find it strange that in schools we feed children, yeah, meat. I find it odd. I mean, yeah. Sorry. Just one quick comment. I was interested. I did look at the recording from last week where your MP spoke, and I really enjoyed watching that. And then the guy from Friends of the Earth spoke. And a lot of it was how we become net zero by 2050. And I was slightly puzzled why they didn't mention meat once. When, if we are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 to say net zero, to prevent melting of ice caps and, you know, mass extinction of animals and raising sea levels by 1 meter or 2 levels, I don't know how it can be done unless we can look at how much meat we eat. And it just seems that, as in a country, is if you start telling people, can you please reduce eating meat, even if you say this to children age 14, 15, they don't like it. I mean, we're a country where we're not too keen on being told what to do or what to eat. Any thoughts on that, anybody?
Well, actually, it wasn't going to be my question, but it fits in rather nicely. I noticed that I briefly mentioned my kind of background, and in the mid-90s, the way people approached the public was by shock images. Yeah. And I've noticed that seems to have, looking at, I went to Viva's presentation and yours, and it's very much toned down. Yeah. And I wondered if this was a specific tactic that you find is more effective?
I think if you try and bully people into something, it doesn't work. If you try and shock them, it doesn't work. We already shocked left, right, and center with wars and COVID and Donald Trump or whatever it is. People can only have so much kind of, they can only take so much, I think. If you give a talk in a school and it's shocking and someone goes home in tears and they tell their parents, the parents tell the school, and you will never be allowed back in that school again. That's also why. Someone mentioned about the abattoirs and about the transport of pigs. You're not allowed to show that sort of images on, say, TV. It's banned. So people rarely get a true insight into actually how their meat's made. And by the time it's in the supermarket, it's been cleaned, and there's no blood on it, it has a nice smell. Well, anyone that lives downwind of an abattoir know that they stink to high heaven. That was a bit of a rant. Sorry about that.
No, thank you, Andrew. Is the time for one quick question, Paul, or do we have to?
Yeah, go
leave
for it.
it?
Yes, yeah, that's
Right,
fine. Yeah.
okay. There was mention in chat about chlorinated chicken, and you mentioned Trump. Now,
Brexit.
yeah, I mean, the way I see it, there are two. There's the happy Brexit, where we stop the live export of live animals, and there's the unhappy Brexit, where we accept chlorinated chicken. I just wondered where you thought the land lay.
We were really sold this that we'd have higher animal welfare standards under Brexit. A lot of people who are passionate about animal welfare, they actually voted for Brexit because of this. I don't think there's the faintest chance animal welfare standards will be higher in the UK in, say, 5 years' time than they are now. The EU has some of the highest welfare standards for animals, and we are not going to increase them because it decreases the profits from farms. It's as simple as that.
Well, thanks for depressing us, but I think it's something that does have to be said. So,
sorry about that.
Thank you. I think, Paul, that's probably it, isn't it? Because we do need to get ready for the next presentation by North Yorkshire Rotters.
We should do, yes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Paul, Peter.
Thank you, Andrew. It's much appreciated. And this will be, I think, videoed, and well, it's being videoed, and it will be available for people to look at on our website.
Thanks, everyone. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.